The whistle of a westbound train pierced the dawn silence as Olivia Patterson clutched the hands of her two small children, their tired eyes blinking in the harsh morning light of Superior, Colorado territory. 1873. She stood on the wooden platform, her threadbare carpetbag at her feet, wondering if she'd made the biggest mistake of her life bringing her children to this dusty mining town perched on the eastern edge of the Rocky Mountains. "Mama, I'm hungry." 5-year-old Emma tugged at her skirts, her blonde curls tangled from the 3-day journey. "Me too," echoed 7-year-old Thomas, his serious face pinched with fatigue beneath his too large cap. Olivia mustered a smile she didn't feel. "Just a little longer, my loves. We'll find something to eat soon." The weight of the few coins in her pocket felt impossibly light against the burden of starting a new life. As the platform emptied of passengers, Olivia gathered their meager belongings and led her children toward the dusty main street. Superior was smaller than she'd imagined from the advertisement seeking a schoolteacher, but the mountains rising behind the town promised a majesty she'd never witnessed in her life back east. "Madam, you look a mite lost." The deep voice startled her. Olivia turned to find a tall man watching her with curious hazel eyes beneath the brim of a well-worn hat. His shoulders were broad, his skin sun-darkened, but his expression held no threat, only a question. "I'm looking for the schoolhouse," she explained, "or whoever might be in charge of it. I'm the new teacher." She straightened her back, trying to appear more confident than she felt. The man studied her for a moment, then glanced at the children. "New teacher, huh? Didn't know they were sending for one with little ones." There was no judgment in his voice, just observation. "I'm Hank Yates," he continued, extending a calloused hand. "I work a cattle ranch just outside town, but I'm also on the town council. The schoolhouse is down that way." He pointed toward the end of the street. "Mayor Crawford should be at his office this morning. He'll get you situated." Relief flooded through her. "Thank you, Mr. Yates. I'm Olivia Patterson. These are my children, Thomas and Emma." Thomas looked up at the tall stranger with undisguised curiosity while Emma partially hid behind her mother's skirts. "Pleasure," Hank said with a nod to the children. "Town's been without a proper teacher since Miss Holloway left to get married last spring. The children need learning." His eyes settled on her tired face. "You all had breakfast?" Before she could answer, Emma piped up. "We're awful hungry, mister." A ghost of a smile crossed Hank's weathered face. "Well then, let's remedy that before you meet the mayor. Pearl's Place makes the best flapjacks this side of Denver." Olivia hesitated, pride warring with practicality. "That's very kind, but consider it the town's welcome," Hank said, already lifting her carpetbag. "Besides, Mayor Crawford won't be impressed if your young'uns are fussing from hunger during your meeting." His practical logic won her over. With a grateful nod, Olivia followed him down the boardwalk, each step taking her deeper into the unknown life that awaited her in this frontier town. Pearl's Cafe was a simple establishment with clean wooden tables and the mouth-watering smell of coffee and fresh bread. The plump, gray-haired proprietress greeted Hank with familiar warmth. "Bringing me customers now, Hank Yates. What'll it be?" "Flapjacks for the young'uns and whatever the lady would like," Hank replied, ushering them to a table near the window. Over breakfast, Olivia learned that Superior, despite its small size, served as an important supply stop for the surrounding mining operations and ranches. The town had grown quickly over the past 5 years, and families had settled, bringing with them the need for education. 27 school-aged children at last count, Hank explained. "They've been getting by with Mrs. Simmons teaching reading and such 3 days a week, but she's getting on in years." Olivia nodded, watching her children devour their breakfast. The town seemed decent enough, and teaching 27 children sounded manageable. Perhaps this new beginning wouldn't be as daunting as she'd feared. After breakfast, Hank escorted them to the mayor's office, a small room attached to the general store. Mayor Crawford was a portly man with an impressive mustache and a businesslike manner that softened when he saw the children. "Mrs. Patterson, welcome to Superior. We're mighty pleased you accepted our offer." He shook her hand enthusiastically. "And these must be your young ones." The advertisement didn't mention children. "I hope that's not a problem," Olivia said, straightening her shoulders. "They're well behaved and won't interfere with my duties." The mayor exchanged a glance with Hank. No problem at all, just living arrangements." "The teachers' quarters are rather small, one room behind the schoolhouse." Olivia's heart sank. "I see." "I was thinking," Hank interjected, "about the old widow Jenkins' place. It's been sitting empty since she passed last winter. 2 rooms and solid built." "That might work," the mayor mused. "It needs some fixing up, though." "I can handle that," Hank offered, then looked at Olivia. "If you don't mind waiting a few days before moving in, you and the young uns could stay with Pearl until then. She has rooms above the cafe." Olivia was overwhelmed by the kindness of these strangers. "That's very generous, but I couldn't possibly—" "Nonsense," Mayor Crawford interrupted. "We've waited months for a qualified teacher. A few days of the town's hospitality is the least we can offer." And just like that, arrangements were made. Pearl was more than happy to offer lodging, and Hank promised to have the widow's house habitable within a week. The schoolhouse would be ready for classes to begin the following Monday. That evening, after settling her tired children into bed in Pearl's spare room, Olivia stood by the window, gazing at the silhouette of mountains against the darkening sky. For the first time since her husband's death 2 years ago, she felt a spark of hope. Perhaps here, in this rugged land so different from her Pennsylvania home, she and her children might find more than mere survival. She didn't yet know that Hank Yates, the quiet cattleman who'd appeared like a guardian angel that morning, would become central to that hope, or that his calloused hands, more accustomed to ropes and reins, would soon be building not just a house, but a garden. And with it, the promise of roots in this wild, beautiful land. As promised, Hank began work on the widow's house the very next day. Olivia spent her time getting acquainted with the schoolhouse, a simple but sturdy building with rows of wooden desks, a small blackboard, and shelves of well-worn books. The attached living quarters were indeed tiny, hardly bigger than a storage room, with just enough space for a narrow bed and small table. "Thank goodness for Mr. Yates's suggestion," she murmured to herself, imagining trying to squeeze herself and 2 growing children into the cramped space. The widow's house sat on the edge of town, a modest structure with a sagging porch and shutters hanging askew. But its location offered a view of the mountains that took Olivia's breath away, and the half-acre of land surrounding it held potential she couldn't quite articulate. Each day, Hank worked tirelessly on repairs. He replaced broken floorboards, fixed the roof where it leaked, and built new shutters for the windows. Other townspeople pitched in the blacksmith, repaired the stove. The mercantile owner's wife brought curtains she'd sewn, and even the children helped clear debris from the yard under Thomas's enthusiastic direction. Olivia divided her time between preparing lessons and helping with the house, often bringing lunch to Hank and whoever else was working that day. She noticed how Hank interacted with her children, patient with Emma's endless questions and respectful of Thomas's serious attempts to help with man's work. On the 4th day, while Emma napped inside the partially renovated house, Olivia found Hank standing in the overgrown yard, studying the ground with an intensity that piqued her curiosity. "Is something wrong with the land?" she asked, approaching with 2 cups of coffee. Hank accepted the offered cup with a nod of thanks. "Not wrong, just thinking." "About what?" He gestured toward the expanse of weedy earth. "This soil's good, better than most around here. Widow Jenkins used to grow vegetables, had quite the garden from what I remember." Olivia looked at the neglected yard with new eyes. "A garden would be wonderful. I've always wanted one, but in Philadelphia we only had a small courtyard." "Growing things takes patience," Hank said, kneeling to crumble some soil between his fingers. "And work. But there's something right about coaxing life from the earth." "You sound like you speak from experience," Olivia observed. A shadow passed over his face. "My mother kept gardens, said a home wasn't really a home without something growing nearby." He stood, brushing the dirt from his hands. "Never had much chance to try it myself. Ranch work keeps me moving too much. But you know how, some. Enough to get you started, at least." He looked at her thoughtfully. "Your young'uns might enjoy learning too, especially that boy of yours. He's got a serious mind." Olivia smiled, warming to the idea. "Thomas takes after his father that way. Richard was always methodical, planning everything carefully." The mention of her late husband brought the familiar ache, but it was softer now, somehow. Hank nodded, seeming to understand what she didn't say. "Well, the house should be livable by tomorrow. Might start turning this soil after that if you're agreeable." "I'd like that very much," Olivia said, surprised by how much she meant it. The next day they moved into the widow's house. It was simple but clean, with 2 bedrooms, a kitchen with a sturdy table, and a small sitting area. The children explored every corner with excitement, Thomas claiming a windowsill for his collection of interesting rocks, and Emma arranging her single doll on the bed they would share. That evening, Olivia stood on the porch watching the sunset paint the mountains in hues of gold and purple. A sense of peace settled over her that she hadn't felt in years. A movement caught her eye. Hank, walking up the path with something in his arms. "Evening, Mrs. Patterson," he called. "Brought you a housewarming gift." As he climbed the steps, she saw he carried a small wooden box filled with seedlings. "What are these?" "Beginnings," he said simply, setting the box on the porch rail. "Tomatoes, beans, squash, and these," he pointed to smaller sprouts, "are flowers. Marigolds. Good for keeping pests away from vegetables, and they're pretty besides." Touched by his thoughtfulness, Olivia found herself blinking back tears. "Thank you, this is. I don't know what to say." Hank looked slightly uncomfortable with her emotion. "It's nothing. Just thought you might want to get started." He cleared his throat. "I'll come by tomorrow after your teaching day. We can mark out the garden plot." As he turned to leave, Olivia called after him, "Would you stay for supper? It's just simple stew, but there's plenty." He hesitated, then nodded. "I'd be obliged." That night, the 4 of them shared a meal around the freshly scrubbed table. Hank was quiet but attentive, answering Thomas's questions about ranching with patience and smiling at Emma's animated stories about the kittens she'd discovered behind Pearl's cafe. Over the next week, a routine developed. Olivia taught during the day, quickly winning the respect of her students and their parents with her firm but kind approach. After school, she would return home to find Hank working on the garden, often with Thomas as his earnest assistant. The plot took shape, rows marked with string. The earth turned and amended with composted manure from Hank's ranch. They planted the seedlings with care, and Hank showed them how to fashion simple frames for the climbing beans. "The key is water," he explained one evening as they finished the day's work. "This land gets thirsty quick. You'll need to water deep, not just on the surface." Olivia nodded, wiping perspiration from her forehead. "I never realized gardening was such hard work." "Most worthwhile things are," Hank replied, his eyes meeting hers briefly before looking away. Emma, who had been playing nearby with a handful of smooth stones, suddenly piped up, "Mr. Yates, will you stay forever to help with our garden?" The innocent question hung in the air, creating a moment of tension Olivia didn't fully understand. Hank crouched to Emma's level. "Gardens don't need tending forever, little one. Just until things take root and start growing strong on their own. Like people." Emma asked with the simple wisdom of children. A rare smile transformed Hank's serious face. "Just like people." Later that night, after the children were asleep, Olivia sat on the porch steps, enjoying the cool evening air and the chorus of crickets. The waxing moon cast enough light to illuminate the newly planted garden, rows of potential waiting to be fulfilled. She heard footsteps on the path, and wasn't surprised to see Hank approaching. He'd forgotten his work gloves, he explained, but seemed in no hurry to retrieve them after finding them on the porch rail. "It's a beautiful night," Olivia said, making room for him on the step. He sat beside her, leaving a respectful distance between them. "That it is." They sat in comfortable silence for a while before Olivia spoke again. "I haven't thanked you properly for all you've done." "No need," he said simply. "There is," she insisted. "When we arrived, I was terrified I'd made a terrible mistake. I had no idea how we would manage. And then you appeared, and suddenly everything seemed possible." He looked uncomfortable with her gratitude. "Anyone would have helped, perhaps, but it was you who did." She gathered her courage. "May I ask why? You've gone well beyond mere neighborliness." Hank was quiet for so long she thought he might not answer. When he did, his voice was low. "When I saw you standing there with those children, looking both scared and determined, it reminded me of my mother after my father died. I was about your Thomas's age. What happened? Fever took him. Left my mother with me and my sister to raise alone. We had a small ranch in Kansas then. Neighbors helped some, but mostly she managed alone." His admiration was evident in his voice. "She was the strongest person I've ever known." "What became of her?" Olivia asked gently. "She passed 10 years ago. My sister married and moved to California." He looked toward the mountains, silhouetted against the night sky. "I came west, worked as a ranch hand until I saved enough to buy my own place." "You've done well for yourself," he shrugged. "I get by, it's quiet mostly." "Suits me." His eyes met hers in the moonlight. Or it did. The implication of his words hung between them, creating a tension that wasn't entirely uncomfortable. "The children adore you," Olivia said finally. "Especially Thomas. He needs a man to look up to. He's a good boy, smart. He'll make something of himself someday. And Emma thinks you hang the moon," she added with a smile. Hank chuckled. "She's something else. Reminds me of my sister, always talking, always curious." They lapsed into another comfortable silence before Hank rose to leave. "Should let you get some rest. School tomorrow." Olivia stood as well. "You're welcome to supper anytime, you know, not just when you're working here." He hesitated, then nodded. "I'd like that." As she watched him walk away, Olivia realized that in just 2 weeks, this quiet, steadfast man had become important to her in ways she hadn't anticipated. The garden he'd helped create seemed suddenly symbolic, a beginning, a promise, a hope for growth in this new place. The next few weeks passed in a rhythm of teaching, gardening, and increasingly frequent shared meals. Hank usually came by in the evenings, sometimes bringing fresh milk from his cow or eggs from his chickens. He taught Thomas how to fish in the creek that ran behind the property, and carved a small wooden horse for Emma that she treasured above all her possessions. The garden flourished under their combined care. Green shoots pushed through the soil, reaching for the sun. Bean vines climbed their stakes, and tomato plants grew sturdy and lush. Olivia found herself hurrying home each afternoon, eager to check on their progress and water the thirsty plants. One Saturday in late May, Hank arrived early, leading a gentle bay mare with white socks. "Thought you might like to see a bit more of the country," he explained as Thomas and Emma rushed to pet the horse. "This is Daisy. She's steady and calm, good for beginners." "You want to take us riding?" Olivia asked, surprised. "Just an easy trail up to the lookout point. Best view of the valley from there." He seemed almost nervous. "Packed a lunch. Thought the young'uns might enjoy an adventure." Emma was already begging to go, and Thomas's eyes shone with excitement at the prospect. "I've never ridden before," Olivia admitted. "Daisy will carry you and Emma. I'll take Thomas up with me on Buck." He gestured to his own mount, a sturdy chestnut gelding. "It's not far." The day was perfect, clear blue skies and a gentle breeze that carried the scent of pine and wildflowers. Hank helped Olivia mount first, then handed Emma up to sit in front of her. Thomas rode proudly with Hank, his small hands gripping the saddle horn. The trail wound through aspen groves and pine forests, climbing gradually. Hank pointed out wildlife along the way, a family of deer, a red-tailed hawk circling above, the tracks of a fox in a muddy patch. The children were enthralled, and Olivia found herself relaxing into the rhythm of the horse beneath her, enjoying the sway and the warm sun on her face. The lookout point was even more spectacular than Hank had promised, a rocky outcropping that offered views of the entire valley. The town of Superior appearing like a miniature below, and mountains stretching to the horizon. They spread a blanket on a grassy patch and enjoyed the simple lunch Hank had packed: fried chicken, cornbread, and apple tarts from Pearl's Cafe. The children, invigorated by the fresh air and excitement, ate heartily before racing off to explore nearby rocks, staying within the boundaries Hank had firmly established. "This is magnificent," Olivia said, gazing at the panoramic view. "I never imagined such beauty existed." "First time I saw it, I knew I'd found home," Hank replied. "Something about these mountains speaks to the soul." She studied his profile, strong and weathered against the backdrop of the wild landscape. "How long have you been here?" 8 years now. "Worked 3 ranches before I could afford my own place." Pride colored his voice. "It's not much, 160 acres, small herd of cattle, couple horses besides Buck and Daisy, but it's mine." "You've built something real," Olivia said. "Something lasting." He turned to face her. "What about you? What brought you all the way from Philadelphia to a dusty frontier town?" She looked toward the children, making sure they were still safely in sight before answering. "Necessity at first. After Richard died, I sold our home to pay his debts. There was little left." She twisted the simple gold band she still wore. "I taught at a girls' school in Philadelphia, but the salary barely covered our room and board. When I saw the advertisement for a teacher here, offering housing and better pay, it seemed like providence." "Must have taken courage, traveling so far with 2 young ones. Or desperation," she said with a sad smile. "Some days I wasn't sure which. And now?" His question was gentle but probing. Olivia watched Emma showing Thomas a wildflower she'd discovered, their faces alight with joy and freedom she'd rarely seen in the city. "Now I think it was the best decision I could have made. The children are thriving here. The school work is rewarding. And the people," she met his gaze directly, "have been kinder than I dared hope." Something shifted in Hank's expression, a softening, a vulnerability he usually kept hidden. "I'm glad you came, Olivia." It was the first time he'd used her given name, and the intimacy of it made her heart quicken. Before she could respond, the children came racing back, Emma clutching a bouquet of wildflowers and Thomas proudly displaying a piece of quartz he'd discovered. The moment passed, but something had changed between them, a recognition of feelings that had been growing since that first morning at the train station. As they rode back down the mountain in the golden afternoon light, Olivia found herself thinking about second chances and new beginnings, about gardens taking root in unfamiliar soil, and about a quiet cowboy whose steady presence had become as essential to her as the air she breathed. That evening, after the children were asleep, Hank lingered on the porch longer than usual. The waxing moon illuminated the garden, now lush with growth, a testament to their shared labor. "Got to ride out tomorrow," he said finally. "Taking some cattle to the north pasture. Might be gone a few days." "We'll miss you," Olivia said simply. "The garden too. You'll manage fine. Just remember to water deep." She nodded, feeling an inexplicable sense of loss at the thought of his absence. "Be careful out there. Always am." He hesitated, then reached into his pocket. "Almost forgot. Brought something for you." He extended his hand, revealing a small leather pouch. Curious, Olivia accepted it and loosened the drawstring. Inside were seeds, dozens of them, various sizes and shapes. "What are these?" "Future gardens," Hank explained. "Carrots, radishes, lettuce. Some flowers, too, for when these plants are done." The gift touched her deeply, not just for what it was, but for what it represented: continuity, foresight, permanence. "Thank you," she said softly. "I'll keep them safe until it's time to plant." "That's the thing about gardens," Hank said, his voice low in the darkness. "Always something to look forward to, always another season coming." Their eyes met, and in that moment, Olivia felt a certainty she hadn't experienced since before Richard's death, that life still held possibilities she hadn't dared imagine. When Hank finally bid her good night, his hand lingered on hers a moment longer than necessary. "I'll stop by when I get back." "We'll be here," she promised. Growing. The days of Hank's absence seemed longer than they should have. Olivia kept busy with teaching, and the children helped faithfully with the garden each afternoon. Emma insisted on picking a bouquet of the marigolds and placing them on the kitchen table, so Mr. Yates will see them when he comes back. Thomas took his responsibility as temporary man of the house seriously, checking the garden for pests and carrying water from the pump each morning and evening. "Mr. Yates said the plants need consistent care," he explained solemnly. "We can't let him down." On the fourth day, dark clouds gathered over the mountains, promising the first real rainstorm since their arrival. Olivia hurried the children home from school as thunder rumbled in the distance. "Will the garden be all right, Mama?" Emma asked worriedly as fat raindrops began to fall. "The rain is good for it, sweetheart," Olivia assured her. "Plants need rain to grow strong." They reached the house just as the storm broke in earnest. Wind lashed the trees, and lightning split the sky, followed by booming thunder that made Emma cover her ears. As Olivia was preparing supper, a particularly violent gust rattled the windows, and Thomas called from the front room, "Mama, the garden." She rushed to the window to see their carefully tended bean frames swaying dangerously in the wind. Without thinking, she grabbed her shawl. "Stay inside," she instructed the children. "I need to secure the frames." Rain soaked her instantly as she raced to the garden. The wind nearly knocked her off her feet, but she managed to reach the bean frames, which were threatening to topple. Frantically, she tried to push the main support pole deeper into the ground, mud sucking at her shoes. "Olivia." A familiar voice called over the storm. Through the curtain of rain, she saw Hank running toward her, his hat gone, hair plastered to his face. "The beans," she tried to explain, but he was already beside her, his strong hands working to stabilize the pole she'd been struggling with. "Hold this," he shouted above the wind, and together they managed to secure the frame, tying it more firmly with rope he pulled from his pocket. They worked quickly, saving what they could of the fragile plants. By the time they finished, both were drenched to the skin and covered in mud. "Inside," Hank urged, taking her elbow to steady her on the slippery ground. They half ran to the porch, where Thomas stood wide-eyed in the doorway. "Is the garden okay?" he asked anxiously. "It'll survive," Hank assured him, water streaming from his clothes onto the porch boards. "Your ma saved it." "We saved it," Olivia corrected, suddenly aware of her bedraggled appearance. "Thomas, fetch some towels, please." Emma appeared behind her brother, eyes wide. "Mr. Yates, you came back in the storm." He knelt to her level, careful not to drip on her. "Couldn't let your garden wash away, could I, once they'd dried off as best they could?" Olivia insisted Hank stay for supper. He disappeared briefly to his horse, tethered under a tree nearby, and returned with a bundle. "Change of clothes," he explained. "Always carry extras on the trail." She directed him to her bedroom to change, then hurried to do the same, donning her one spare dress while her wet clothes dripped in the kitchen. The storm continued to rage outside, but inside the small house, a different kind of energy hummed. The children were delighted by Hank's unexpected return and the excitement of the rescue mission. They ate supper by lamplight, thunder occasionally punctuating their conversation. "Did you have adventures with the cattle, Mr. Yates?" Emma asked, her eyes shining. Hank smiled. "Not many. Cattle prefer boring days, though we did see a mountain lion from a distance." Thomas was full of questions about the big cat, which Hank answered patiently. Olivia watched them, her heart full at the easy way he interacted with her children, never dismissing their curiosity or treating them as nuisances. After supper, Hank insisted on helping with the dishes despite Olivia's protests. As they worked side by side in the small kitchen, the children playing quietly in the front room, a comfortable intimacy settled between them. "I wasn't expecting you back today," Olivia said, passing him a plate to dry. "Especially not in this weather." "Got the cattle settled faster than I thought. Wanted to check on the garden before the storm hit, but it caught me on the trail." He glanced at her. "Good thing, too. Those beans would have been goners." "It's just a garden," she said. "Not worth you riding through a storm." His hand stilled on the dish he was drying. "It's not just a garden, Olivia, it's—" He seemed to struggle for words. "It's something we built together, something growing." The simple honesty of his statement touched her deeply. "Yes, it is." Outside, the storm began to abate, the spaces between thunder growing longer. But neither made a move to end the moment. "I should probably head back to my place," Hank said finally, though he made no move toward the door. Olivia looked toward the window, where rain still streamed down the glass. "It's still pouring, and dark," she hesitated. "The children's room has an extra pallet. You could stay." Their eyes met, and Olivia felt a blush rise to her cheeks. "I just mean it's not safe to ride in this weather." "Wouldn't want to impose," he said, though she could tell he was tempted by the offer. "It's not an imposition, after all you've done for us." She managed a smile. "Besides, Thomas would be thrilled to have you sleep in his room. He admires you so." Hank's expression softened. "He's a fine boy." "You've raised him well." "Thank you. That means a great deal, especially from you." She hesitated, then added, "He needs good men in his life to learn from." Something shifted in Hank's eyes, a recognition, a decision. "I'd be honored to stay then." The storm passed during the night, and morning broke clear and fresh, the world washed clean. Olivia woke to the sound of laughter outside her window. Peering out, she saw Hank with both children in the garden, assessing the storm damage. He'd clearly been up for some time, his hair still damp from washing. His shirt sleeves rolled to expose muscular forearms as he demonstrated to Thomas how to properly stake a fallen tomato plant. She watched them for a moment, struck by how natural they looked together, Hank patient and attentive, Thomas earnest and eager to learn, Emma dancing around them with her rag doll, chattering continuously. The scene stirred something deep within her, longing, hope, possibilities she'd thought forever closed to her after Richard's death. Dressing quickly, she joined them in the morning sunshine. The garden had weathered the storm remarkably well, thanks to their efforts the night before. A few plants were bent but not broken, and the rich soil had absorbed the rain, leaving everything looking greener and more vibrant. "Morning," Hank greeted her, straightening from his crouch. "Hope we didn't wake you." "Not at all. I should have been up earlier." She surveyed their work. "You've been busy." "Mr. Yates showed me how to fix the broken plants," Thomas reported proudly. "He says they're resilient like people." Olivia met Hank's eyes over her son's head. "Is that so?" "Nature's got a way of bouncing back," Hank said simply, "given the right conditions." There was something in his voice, a question perhaps, or an offering that made her heart beat faster. "Mama, can Mr. Yates stay for breakfast?" Emma asked, tugging at her skirt. "He makes funny faces when I talk to my doll." Hank looked slightly embarrassed and Olivia laughed. "Of course he can stay for breakfast. That is, if he doesn't need to get back to his ranch right away." "Cattle can wait an hour," he replied, his eyes never leaving hers. Over breakfast they talked easily of ordinary things, the garden, school matters, town gossip Pearl had shared. The children dominated the conversation, with Emma recounting elaborate tales about her doll's adventures and Thomas asking serious questions about ranching. As they finished eating, Thomas asked hesitantly, "Mr. Yates, could I come see your ranch sometime? I've never seen a real one." Hank glanced at Olivia before answering. "If your ma agrees, I'd be proud to show you around. Both of you," he added, including Emma. "Can we, Mama, please?" Emma bounced in her seat. "Perhaps next Saturday," Olivia suggested, warmed by the children's enthusiasm and Hank's obvious pleasure at their interest. "If Mr. Yates isn't too busy." "Never too busy for good company," Hank replied, and though he spoke to the children, his eyes met Olivia's with an intensity that made her breath catch. Later, as he prepared to leave, Hank lingered on the porch. The children had run off to check on the garden once more, leaving the adults alone. "Thank you for staying," Olivia said. "The children were delighted to have breakfast with you. Just the children." There was a teasing note in his voice she hadn't heard before. "You know better than that," she replied softly. He stepped closer. "I'd like to call on you properly, Olivia. Not just for gardening or meals with the young uns." Her heart fluttered. "I'd like that too." "Sunday," he suggested. "Church, then dinner. I know a nice spot by the creek for a picnic." The children, Pearl mentioned she'd love to have them visit after church, something about baking cookies. Olivia laughed. "You've thought of everything." "Not everything," he admitted, his expression growing serious. "But I'm working on it." As he mounted Buck to ride home, Olivia stood on the porch watching him go, a sense of anticipation building within her. Sunday suddenly seemed very far away. The next day at school, Olivia found it difficult to keep her mind on her lessons. Her thoughts kept drifting to Hank, his quiet strength, his kindness to her children, the way his rare smiles transformed his face. By the time the school day ended, she'd had to call herself back to attention more times than she cared to admit. Walking home with Thomas and Emma, she listened to their chatter about the coming visit to Hank's ranch with an indulgent smile. Their enthusiasm was touching, and she couldn't help but wonder what it might mean, this connection forming between her small family and the solitary rancher. As they rounded the bend in the road that led to their house, Olivia stopped short. There, in front of their home, was a wagon piled with lumber, and Hank, working shirtless in the afternoon sun, was constructing what appeared to be a fence around their garden. Thomas broke away, running toward him with a shout of greeting. Emma followed, her short legs pumping to keep up with her brother. Hank looked up at their approach, his face breaking into a smile as he paused to greet the children. Even from a distance, Olivia could see the way he crouched to their level, listening seriously to whatever Thomas was telling him with animated gestures. She approached more slowly, taking in the scene. The fence was about half finished, a simple but sturdy construction that would protect their growing plants from rabbits and other small creatures. "What's all this?" she asked when she reached them. Hank straightened, suddenly self-conscious about his state of undress. He reached for his shirt, which hung from a nearby post. Thought the garden could use some protection, especially with the rabbits getting bold after the rain. "It's wonderful," she said sincerely, "but you should have waited for us to help. Wanted to surprise you." He pulled his shirt on, buttons left undone in the heat. Besides, gives these two a chance to learn fence building. "Can I help, Mr. Yates, please?" Thomas was practically vibrating with eagerness. "Me too," Emma chimed in. "Change your school clothes first," Olivia instructed. "Then you can help carefully." As the children raced inside, she turned back to Hank. "You didn't have to do this." "Wanted to," he said simply. Their eyes held for a long moment before Olivia broke the connection, suddenly aware of her racing pulse. "I'll get changed too, then I can help as well." The remainder of the afternoon passed in shared labor and easy conversation. Hank showed Thomas how to measure and mark the fence posts, while Emma was tasked with handing them nails from a small bucket, a job she took very seriously. Olivia worked alongside Hank, holding boards steady as he hammered them into place. By dusk, the fence was complete, a neat rectangle enclosing their flourishing garden. Olivia insisted Hank stay for supper, and he accepted without hesitation. The meal was filled with the children's excited chatter about the fence building and their upcoming visit to the ranch. After the children were asleep, Olivia and Hank sat on the porch steps, a respectable distance between them, watching fireflies dance in the gathering darkness. "Thank you for the fence," Olivia said softly. "It's perfect. Garden deserves to be protected," he replied, all that promise growing there. She turned to study his profile in the faint moonlight. "You've done so much for us, Hank. I don't know how I'll ever repay you." He was quiet for a moment before responding. "Not looking for repayment." "Then what are you looking for?" The question slipped out before she could consider its boldness. Hank turned to meet her gaze, his expression open and vulnerable in a way she'd never seen before. "A reason to build more than fences." The simple honesty of his answer took her breath away. Before she could formulate a response, he continued, his voice low and hesitant. "I've lived alone a long time, Olivia. Thought that's how it would always be. Then you and those children stepped off that train and suddenly—" He paused, searching for words. "Suddenly my quiet life seemed empty." Emotion welled in her throat. "Hank, you don't need to say anything," he interrupted gently. "It's too soon, I know that. You've got those young'uns to think about and a life you're just beginning to build here." He stood, his tall figure silhouetted against the night sky. "I just wanted you to know where I stand." As he moved to leave, Olivia rose quickly and caught his hand. "Wait." He stilled, his eyes questioning. "It's not too soon to acknowledge what's growing between us," she said softly. "Whatever it may become." His fingers tightened around hers. "Sunday seems a long way off," she smiled. "Yes, it does." He raised her hand to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles that sent warmth coursing through her. "Good night, Olivia." "Good night, Hank." She watched him walk away, her hand still tingling from his touch, her heart lighter than it had been in years. Sunday dawned clear and beautiful. Olivia dressed with extra care, choosing her best dress, a navy blue cotton with white piping that Richard had always admired. The thought of her late husband brought a bittersweet pang, but no longer the sharp grief that had once accompanied his memory. "Would you approve, Richard?" she murmured to herself as she pinned her hair. "I think you would. You always wanted us to be happy." Church was well attended that morning, the small whitewashed building filled with familiar faces. Hank was already seated when Olivia arrived with the children, and he stood to welcome them into his pew. Emma immediately claimed the spot next to him, while Thomas sat proudly on his other side, leaving Olivia the end seat. Throughout the service, she was acutely aware of Hank's presence, his deep voice joining in the hymns, the clean scent of soap and sunshine that emanated from his Sunday best, the way he helped Emma find the right pages in the hymnal. When the service ended, Pearl approached with a broad smile. "There are my helpers for the day. Are you ready to learn my secret cookie recipe?" she asked the children. Emma nodded enthusiastically, while Thomas tried to look cool but couldn't hide his interest. After extracting promises of good behavior from both children, Olivia watched them leave with Pearl, feeling a mixture of gratitude and nervous anticipation at being alone with Hank. "Shall we?" he asked, offering his arm. The picnic spot Hank had chosen was indeed lovely, a grassy clearing beside the creek that ran through the edge of town, shaded by cottonwood trees whose leaves whispered in the gentle breeze. He spread a blanket on the grass and unpacked a basket containing fried chicken, biscuits, pickled vegetables, and 2 slices of Pearl's apple pie. "This is wonderful," Olivia said, settling onto the blanket. "When did you have time to arrange all this?" "Got up early," Hank admitted. "Pearl had the food ready. She's quite invested in our outing, it seems." Olivia laughed. "The entire town probably knows we're here. Pearl isn't known for her discretion." "Does that bother you?" he asked, suddenly concerned. "Not at all," she assured him. "It's nice, actually, to be part of a community that cares." They ate in comfortable conversation, talking of his ranch, her teaching, books they'd both read, and childhood memories. Hank spoke more than she'd ever heard him speak before, telling stories of his youth in Kansas, his journey west, the years of hard work to establish his ranch. "It must have been lonely," Olivia observed. "Building a life alone." "Didn't think about it much," he admitted. Always the next task, the next season. But lately, he met her eyes. "Lately the quiet's been getting louder, if that makes sense." She nodded, understanding perfectly. "After Richard died, the silence was deafening. If not for the children, I might have been swallowed by it." "They're fine young uns," Hank said. "You've done right by them." "I've tried, but there are things I can't give them, especially Thomas." She hesitated. "He needs a man's guidance, especially as he grows older." Hank's expression grew serious. "He's got a good head on his shoulders. Listens well, thinks before he speaks. Reminds me of myself at that age." "He admires you tremendously," Olivia said softly. "You're very good with him, with both of them. They make it easy." He looked down, fidgeting with a blade of grass. "My own father wasn't much for talking or teaching. Always figured if I ever had children, I'd do things differently." The implicit possibility in his words hung between them, a future neither had dared voice explicitly. After a moment, Hank changed the subject, asking about her life in Philadelphia. Olivia told him about growing up as a merchant's daughter, her education at a ladies' seminary, meeting Richard at a church social when she was 18. "He was kind and steady," she recalled. "My father approved of his prospects as a clerk in a law office. We had a comfortable life until he fell ill." "What happened?" Hank asked gently. "Consumption. It took him quickly, which was a blessing in its way." She sighed. "But he hadn't prepared for, after. There were debts I knew nothing about. The house had to be sold to settle them." "That must have been difficult, with 2 little ones." "It was. My parents had both passed by then, and Richard's family lived far away in Boston. They offered to take the children, but not me. The memory still stung, as if I could be separated from them. Their loss, Hank said firmly. Those children are lucky to have such a mother. His unwavering support warmed her heart, and now they have you in their lives as well. The afternoon slipped away in easy conversation. As the sun began its descent toward the mountains, they packed up the remains of their picnic and walked back toward town, taking the long way along the creek. When they reached a particularly beautiful spot, Hank stopped and turned to face her. "Olivia, there's something I need to say." Her heart quickened at his serious tone. "Yes." He took her hands in his calloused fingers gentle against her skin. "I'm not a man of fancy words or grand gestures, but I know my own mind and my heart." He took a deep breath. "I've come to care for you and those children more than I thought possible, and I hope you might feel something similar." "I do," she whispered, her eyes never leaving his. Encouraged, he continued. "I'm not asking for promises today, just permission to court you properly. To see where this path might lead us." Joy bubbled up within her. "I'd like that very much, Hank." His face broke into a rare, unguarded smile that transformed his features. Slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wished, he leaned forward and pressed his lips gently to hers. The kiss was brief but tender, a promise of deeper feelings waiting to be explored. When they parted, Olivia felt breathless, as if something fundamental had shifted in her world. They walked back to Pearl's cafe hand in hand, both quiet, absorbing the significance of what had just transpired between them. Pearl's knowing smile when they arrived to collect the children suggested she'd anticipated this development, but she limited her comments to observations about how well-behaved Thomas and Emma had been. The following weeks unfolded in a pattern that brought increasing joy to Olivia's heart. Hank called on her regularly, sometimes joining them for supper, other times taking her for walks while Pearl watched the children. On Saturdays, they often visited his ranch, where Thomas was learning to ride a gentle pony Hank had acquired just for teaching purposes, and Emma delighted in collecting eggs from the chicken coop. The garden flourished under their combined care, yielding a bounty of vegetables that Olivia proudly served at meals and preserved for the coming winter. Hank expanded the plot, adding a section for pumpkins and winter squash, and built a small shed for storing tools. One evening in mid-July, as they sat on the porch watching the children chase fireflies in the yard, Hank took her hand. "Been thinking," he began. "That sounds dangerous," she teased, loving the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled. "Might be," he agreed. "Thinking about the future." "About what I want." Her heart skipped. "And what is that?" He gestured toward the children, now collapsed in giggles on the grass. "This. Evenings like this, mornings too, and all the hours in between." He turned to face her fully. "I love you, Olivia, have since I don't know when. And those children, I love them as if they were my own." Tears welled in her eyes. "We love you too, so much. I'm not trying to replace their father," he continued earnestly, "but I'd like to be a father to them if they'll have me, and a husband to you." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a simple gold band. "Will you marry me, Olivia? Make a family with me?" Joy overwhelmed her. "Yes," she whispered through happy tears. "Yes, with all my heart." He slipped the ring onto her finger, then kissed her with a tenderness that spoke of promises kept and a future filled with love. "Should we tell the children?" she asked when they finally parted. Hank nodded. "Thomas and I had a man-to-man talk yesterday. Asked his permission to marry his ma." Touched by his thoughtfulness, Olivia asked, "What did he say?" "Said it was about time I made an honest proposal since I'd already built you a garden." Hank's eyes twinkled. "Smart boy, that one. They called the children over and shared their news. Emma clapped her hands in delight, while Thomas tried to look dignified but couldn't suppress his grin. "Does this mean we'll live at the ranch?" Thomas asked eagerly. Hank exchanged a glance with Olivia before answering. "That's something your ma and I need to discuss. But wherever we live, we'll be together. That's what matters." Later, after the children were asleep, Olivia and Hank sat close together on the porch swing, her head resting on his shoulder as they contemplated their future. "I've been thinking about the house," Hank said. "It's sturdy but small. Could add onto it easy enough. Another bedroom for the young uns." "And the garden?" Olivia asked, knowing how much it meant to both of them. "Thought we might expand it next spring. Maybe add some fruit trees along the southern edge." He kissed the top of her head. "Garden's not going anywhere. It's where we started. Where you started building our future before I even knew what was happening," she said softly. "Just needed somewhere to put down roots," he admitted. "Someplace to belong. And now I know it's not the place that matters." He tilted her face up to his. "It's who you're with." The wedding took place on a perfect September day, with the mountains ablaze in autumn colors and the garden still yielding its final harvest. The entire town turned out to witness the union of their teacher and the quiet rancher who'd courted her with a garden. Pearl insisted on baking the wedding cake. The mercantile owner's wife made Olivia a new dress of cream-colored cotton with lace trim, and Mayor Crawford offered the use of his large backyard for the celebration. Emma served as flower girl, sprinkling late-blooming marigold petals from their garden along the path. Thomas stood proudly beside Hank as his best man, his serious face transformed by a smile as he watched his mother walk toward them on the arm of Doc Johnson, the elderly physician who had delivered both Thomas and Emma and had agreed to give the bride away. The ceremony was simple but heartfelt. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Hank's kiss was both tender and possessive, a promise of the life they would build together. The celebration lasted well into the evening, with music and dancing under lantern light. As the sun set behind the mountains, casting long shadows across the yard, Hank pulled Olivia aside for a private moment. "Happy?" he asked, his arms encircling her waist. "Completely," she assured him, leaning into his strength. "And you, any regrets about taking on a ready-made family?" "Only one," he said solemnly. At her questioning look, he continued, "Should have built that garden sooner, might have convinced you to marry me weeks ago." She laughed, her heart full. "I think your timing was perfect, Hank Yates. Everything about this has been perfect." Over his shoulder, she could see Thomas teaching one of the town boys a lasso trick Hank had shown him, while Emma danced with Mayor Crawford, perched on his shiny boots. The scene filled her with gratitude for the journey that had brought them to this moment, from fearful arrival to joyful belonging. "What are you thinking?" Hank asked, noticing her contemplative expression. "About beginnings," she replied. "And how the scariest ones sometimes lead to the most beautiful endings." His eyes softened. "This isn't an ending, Olivia, just another beginning." As if to underscore his words, a shooting star streaked across the darkening sky, a bright promise against the vastness of the frontier night. "Look, Mama, Mr. Yates, I mean, Pa," Thomas called excitedly, pointing upward. "A falling star, make a wish," Hank called back. But as Olivia looked at her children's happy faces and felt the solid strength of her new husband beside her, she knew there was nothing left to wish for. Everything she needed was right here, a family once broken now made whole, rooted in love as sturdy and promising as the garden that had first brought them together. 10 years later, Olivia stood at the edge of the expanded garden behind their ranch house, watching as Hank showed their youngest son, 4-year-old Richard, how to pull carrots without breaking the tops. The garden had grown with their family, now covering nearly an acre, and producing enough vegetables to share with neighbors and sell in town. Thomas, now 17 and nearly as tall as his stepfather, was mending a fence nearby, his movements mirroring Hank's methodical style. Emma, 15, and blossoming into a beauty with her mother's honey blonde hair and Hank's hazel eyes, sat under a cottonwood tree, reading aloud to 7-year-old Sarah, their middle child who had inherited Olivia's love of books and Hank's quiet determination. The years had brought changes to Superior. The railroad had expanded, bringing more settlers and turning the once small mining town into a bustling community. Olivia had eventually handed over teaching duties to a younger woman when Sarah was born, though she still tutored students who needed extra help and served on the school board. Hank's ranch had prospered, growing from the original 160 acres to nearly 500, with a herd of quality cattle that fetched top prices at market. The modest house had been expanded twice, first to add bedrooms for the children, then to build a proper kitchen and sitting room where the family gathered on winter evenings. Through it all, the garden remained the heart of their home, a living reminder of how their love had taken root and flourished against all odds. "Mama, look how big!" Richard's excited voice pulled Olivia from her reverie. He ran toward her, a carrot the size of his forearm clutched in his small hands, dirt flying behind him. "My goodness," she exclaimed, crouching to admire his prize. "That might be the biggest carrot we've ever grown." Hank followed at a more sedate pace, his smile warm as he watched his youngest son's excitement. At 45, his dark hair was now threaded with silver at the temples, and fine lines crinkled the corners of his eyes, but he was still the strong, steady man who had captured her heart a decade ago. "Think we should enter it in the Harvest Festival?" he suggested, ruffling Richard's dark curls. The boy nodded enthusiastically. "Can I carry it in the parade, Pa? Reckon you've earned that right, partner, seeing as how you helped plant those seeds." Olivia's heart swelled as she watched them together, this child who had never known any father but Hank, and the man who had embraced parenthood with the same quiet dedication he brought to everything that mattered. Later that evening, after the children were asleep, Olivia and Hank sat on the porch swing that he had built when Sarah was born. The night was warm, stars scattered like diamond dust across the velvet sky, the scent of late summer flowers perfuming the air. "Thomas was talking about college again," Hank said, his arm draped comfortably around her shoulders. "Said he might want to study agriculture at that new school in Fort Collins." Olivia nodded. "He mentioned it to me too. He wants to bring new farming techniques back to the ranch." "Boy's got vision, reminds me of his mother that way." Hank's voice held pride and a touch of wistfulness. "Hard to believe he'll be leaving us soon." "He'll be back," Olivia said confidently. "This is home." She turned to study her husband's profile in the moonlight. "Any regrets about any of it?" Hank considered the question seriously, as he did all things. "Not a single one. Building that garden was the best decision I ever made." He smiled, the special smile he reserved just for her. "It gave me everything I never knew I wanted." "And here I thought you were just being neighborly," she teased. His low chuckle rumbled through his chest. "Maybe at first, but by the time those first beans sprouted, I was already half in love with you and those children." "Only half?" she asked with mock indignation. "Well, I'm a cautious man. Had to make sure the crop was worth tending." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "Turned out to be the best harvest of my life." As they rocked gently in the quiet evening, Olivia reflected on the journey that had brought them here, from that terrifying morning on the train platform to this moment of perfect contentment. She thought of the frightened widow who had arrived in Superior with 2 small children and barely enough money for a week's lodging. How far they had all come since then. "I was so afraid," she admitted softly. "That first day. Wondering if I'd made a terrible mistake bringing the children to such a wild place. And now," she leaned into his solid warmth, "now I can't imagine being anywhere else, or with anyone else." From inside the house came the faint sound of Richard calling out in his sleep. Hank rose immediately. "I'll check on him." Olivia watched him go, still marveling at how naturally he had stepped into fatherhood, first with her children, then with the 3 they had created together. Richard, especially, was the image of his father, with the same quiet intensity and unexpected flashes of humor. When Hank returned, he settled beside her again with a contented sigh. "Just dreaming, probably about that massive carrot," she laughed softly, "or about the pumpkins you promised to plant next week. Boy does love his vegetables." Hank pulled her closer. "Must be in the blood." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the night sounds, the distant howl of a coyote, the rustle of leaves in the gentle breeze, the soft nickering of horses in the nearby corral. "Remember what you said when you first showed me the seedlings?" Olivia asked. "That they were beginnings," Hank nodded. "Best beginning I ever made." She took his hand, tracing the calluses and scars that told the story of a life built through hard work and determination. "Thank you for building that garden, Hank Yates, for asking us to stay. Thank you for saying yes." His voice was husky with emotion. "For making this place a home." As the moon rose higher in the vast Colorado sky, Olivia knew with absolute certainty that the frightened widow who had stepped off the train in Superior all those years ago had found something far more valuable than mere security. She had found her heart's true home in a garden, in a family, and in the arms of a quiet cowboy who had known exactly what they all needed to thrive.